Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session, Strategic Storytelling, How Slowing Down Fuels Faster Growth. My name is Tom Trainer, Head of Marketing at Treasure Data, a leading provider of customer data platforms, or CDPs, and I'm really excited today to introduce today's presenter, Ann Hanley. So Ann is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author who speaks worldwide about how businesses can escape marketing and mediocrity to ignite tangible results. IBM named her one of the 7 people shaping modern marketing, and she's the Chief Content Officer of Marketing Profs. She's a LinkedIn influencer, a keynote speaker, mom, dog person, and a writer, of course. For some quick housekeeping, an on-demand version of this webinar will be available immediately after the presentation. Feel free to click and download the attachments below your screen. And lastly, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions during or after today's session, please submit them below, and we will do our best to answer them. And without further ado, here's Ann.
Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for that generous introduction. I am delighted to be here, as you can see by this ridiculously big smile on my face. So thank you to everyone for tuning in today. One day last June, I noticed a small wild rabbit in my backyard. Now, I've had wild rabbits in my yard before, but this was the first one that wasn't completely terrified of me. He was around so much and so conspicuously that I actually started to wonder, you know, could I make friends with this backyard creature? Could I actually get him to maybe take something from my hand? Like, could I feed him? Now, I've been in marketing long enough to see this as a classic marketing challenge, right? I christened him Bun, and I decided to use it as a kind of conversion campaign, okay? So Bun is already aware of me, I realize. He's already in my backyard. He's already on my, wait for it, he's already on my site, okay? So he's 100% aware that I exist. My challenge, as I saw it, was to think about how could I engage Bun to move him through the funnel. So I thought, he's a friendly little guy. I love animals. I've got this. So I launched my campaign on June 16th, and I thought, you know, hey, Bun, hi, how's it going today? Listen, can I interest you in maybe this carrot that I'm holding in my hand? And can I get your email address if we get disconnected? Well, that didn't work, right?
Hey,
Bun
Ann?
is just like out of here. Yes.
Ann?
Tom.
I think for some reason it's not sharing, so I wonder if you need to click screen share.
Oh,
I see
no.
the intro.
Am I still on that very first one?
Yeah.
Let's figure out what's wrong here. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, let's try this again. It says presenting slides to my audience. Okay, everybody here. Try this one more time. You're seeing that full screen? You seeing my face? And then do you see this guy? I've now gone to the rabbit. Can you see him, Tom?
No rabbit yet, sorry.
No rabbit.
Let's see. I wonder if you want to unclick screen share and re-click it.
Yeah, sorry about this, guys. All right, hold on.
Oh, it happens. Technology.
This is how you know that it's live entertainment.
This isn't pre-recorded? Okay, we see that. So go ahead and screen share and click on your PowerPoint.
Again, people. Sorry about that. All right, one more time, and we're going in. Yes, you can see this.
So I see you. Now click one more. Yep.
Massive big smile, and boom, rabbit.
Yep. There we go. Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh my Lord! Everyone in this audience must have been like, "What is this gal talking about?" Okay. Let's just fast forward through this. So I explained to you about Bun. He's already on my website. He's already aware of me. You see it here as a classic marketing challenge, right? This is, hopefully you're seeing Bun in the conversion funnel here. You're seeing this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. All right, we are in business. All right, sorry, friends. Okay. Let's reset this a little bit since you you missed Bun in the funnel. So Bun is already aware of me. He's already in my yard. He's already on my site, so to speak. So I saw this as a classic content marketing challenge. So I have been in marketing long enough to know that this is often a very easy challenge to solve for, right? Plus, I love animals. And so on June 16th, 2019, I approached Bun directly. And I was like, hey, Bun, let's have a conversation, you and me. Listen, I've noticed that you've been, hey, Bun, disappears. I realized that I probably needed something else to entice Bun at this point, right? It wasn't enough for me to just approach him. So I thought, I need a bit of content. So I rethought my approach and I relaunched my campaign the very next day, June 17th at 10:30 a.m. in the morning. It was a Tuesday. And the reason why I'm getting so specific in this is just so that you know that I am following best practices here, right? So June 17th, I'm sitting on my patio mid-morning. It's the optimal time for any kind of conversion outreach. I'm holding out a carrot to Bun, which is, as everyone knows, the food of choice for rabbits everywhere. Bun, though, you can see him right there, circled. He completely ignored me. I was like, that's okay. Just, first touch, not always a success. Second day, June 18th, there's Bun in the yard. I'm holding out some celery to him, trying to get him to come over to me to convert. Bun is completely ignoring me. So I thought, all right, a direct approach didn't work with no content. The carrot content didn't work. The celery content didn't work. So I thought, what is it going to take, Bun? Why don't I just offer it to him all at once and let him decide? So I noticed that Bun was sitting very often inside this tall mound of wild grass that's right off the patio. And I thought, I'm going to actually put a bunch of stuff there for him. So I spammed him. I gave him carrots. I gave him celery. I gave him romaine lettuce. I gave him broccoli, anything that I could think of that might entice this rabbit to convert. Bun was terrified by this. Right? Bun was like, I don't know what you're trying to do, but this thing is terrifying to me, this giant mound of vegetables. Why am I telling you this? You are here to learn about marketing and about storytelling and how do we do it more effectively in 2020. Why am I telling you this rabbit conversion story? It's because Bun is a kind of proxy for very often how our customers here feel about us, right? We think we have all these amazing things that we want to share with our customers and our prospects. And so we just go to them with all that we've got, but it's really overwhelming. I also approached Bun's conversion as a kind of arms race. I just had this sense that I just needed to keep coming at him as fast as I could with anything that I had in my arsenal to try to entice him, to try to get him to convert. But that was completely the wrong approach. And I love the metaphor of Bun as a proxy for our customers and for our prospects for a second reason. And that's because that Bun and all rabbits everywhere are literally hardwired to distrust us, right? They're hardwired to distrust humans. And very often, that's how we feel about marketing, right? When it feels like marketing, we don't trust it. So the solution is to think about things a little bit differently. And I thought, how can I actually optimize Bun's customer journey? How can I think about things from Bun's point of view, not my point of view? The key, I realized really quickly, was to slow down, right? To not think about converting Bun in a kind of arms race, but slow down my approach. Take the time necessary to build that relationship with him. And why is that important? Because when you slow down at key moments, that's what allows you to speed up later on in terms of building the relationship with the people who matter most to your business. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we actually tell a slower story? How do we slow down to speed up? Or to use this completely ridiculous acronym, S.D.S.U. In marketing, we spend a lot of time trying to grab the attention of our customers and of our prospects, right? We're trying to break through consistently. We're asking, can I have your attention? You know, I have this amazing, cool thing that I want to talk to you about. I have this compelling piece of content. So we think about ways that we can grab people's attention. But I think this is the wrong approach to think about our marketing. It's not about, can I have your attention, but how can I earn your trust? Now, this just isn't words. I think this is a fundamental shift in how we have to think about our marketing, what we're producing and what we're publishing, and how we're approaching the people who matter most to our business. I think of everything that a company does, everything that I do as a marketer, through this lens of trust and affinity, because this is exactly the lens that your customers and your prospects are looking at you and your business through. They're wondering, do they understand my problems best? So does your content, does everything about your marketing, does it convey trust? Are you saying, yes, we get you, you belong here, we understand your problems better than anyone else out there? But secondly, do I like them? And that's the affinity piece of this. And I think like matters a whole lot more in marketing than we give it credit for, because it's the one thing that no one else can replicate. No one else can replicate your personality. No one else can replicate who you are and what you're all about as told through a story, even if they have very similar features and benefits that you've used to build that trust through them with. So trust and affinity, so key to your approach to marketing more generally. Why do I think this matters so much? It's because this is the visual assault that happens every minute of every day. This is 2019. This is before, TikTok was even on here. So it's even more crazy now, right? Every minute of every day, this is all the things that happen. So this is the data slide because, we're all about data here today at the presentation. Tom is all about data, and rightly so. But at the same time, this is the picture that tells the story for me about the perpetual state of overload that we are all in as people and that all of our customers and our prospects are in. And marketing is part of this, right? 73% of us marketers are producing more content now, today, than we were a year ago, according to the latest research that Marketing Profs, my company, did with the Content Marketing Institute. And at the same time, 46% of us are spending more on that content that we're producing. So we're producing more stuff, we're spending more money on the content that we're producing, we're putting out lots and lots of things, lots of webinars like this one, lots of infographics, lots of blog posts, lots of tweets and Instagram posts and Facebook posts and posts on LinkedIn and all of it and all of it and all of it, right? Just hoping that at some point it's going to break through, at some point that our customers are going to catch it. By the way, this is my favorite GIF ever on the internet, or GIF, depending on which side of the fence you're on with that one, but literally the best. So this is not an optimized marketing story, right? It's not about thinking about all the stories that you can tell and all the things that you can do to try to break through. Instead, it's thinking much more strategically about how we are telling the story, first finding that story, and then how we are telling it to engage with our prospects and to engage with our customers to build long-term loyalty, to build that trust and affinity. So let's talk about these moments where I think we need to slow down, to speed up. What are those S.D.S.U moments? Now, I know what part of you, some of you are thinking here today, like, you're like condescending cat here. You're like, what is she even talking about, right? We are living in an always on world. The world is moving faster and faster and faster. Like, what? How do we slow down in marketing when we have more and more things piled on us? When we have more and more requests, from our bosses, from our CEO, from our clients. I think it's important, though, to think more strategically. When I talk about slowing down, it's not slowing down all the time, right? It's slowing down at key moments because, again, these are the moments that will allow us to build those relationships faster and to actually connect with customers in a way that we need to connect with them. Okay, so the first thing is to slow down and question what we think we know about our customers. Now, very often I talk to brands who have done demographic studies, they have personas, they have a sense of who they're speaking to. But what I'm talking about is thinking a little bit more deeply about who is it specifically that you're talking to. Who is it, not only like who they are in aggregate, but specifically who they are, with more specificity and with much more of a storied result. So I was driving on the road, I saw the sign on the side of the road, you know, the hut, and underneath it, it said, "We have pizza." We know that Pizza Hut has pizza. And how do we know that? Because it's in the name, right? This is an example of what I see all the time. It's it's corporate-centric storytelling, right? It's corporate-centric communications. We love to talk about our pizza, but remember that your customer does not care that you have pizza. Instead, they care about what that pizza does for them. Very often marketing starts here. They need a marketing asset for something because they have an email that goes out every Tuesday to their customer base, because they publish an ebook every quarter, or because they post to Instagram every Friday. So they think we need a marketing asset for something. But I think a better place to start any story or marketing strategy is here. Our customer needs what? And what can only we give them? What is the story that we can tell that will connect with them, that will convey that trust and affinity? What does our customer actually need? What role do we play in their lives? And how do we actually fit into the context of their lives versus the other way around, which is the "we have pizza" approach? I think that building trust and affinity is grounded in what I call pathological empathy for an audience. So not just, as I said, a sort of sense of who you're talking to from a demographic standpoint, but a real understanding about who they are and what makes them tick and why they care about your brand or why they could care about your brand. So think about going next level down, and data can obviously help you do that. So I want to share a story about one of my favorite examples from a company who I think does this incredibly well. This is Case Knives. Case Knives was always a B2B company, right? They sold to retailers, and it was a retail network, and that's how their customers bought their knives for years and years and years. This company's been around 116 years. About a year ago, Case Knives decided to go directly to consumer. So first time ever, they decided to go enable their website for e-commerce and go direct to consumer. But that sort of sparked a kind of internal moment, right? Where they said, well, wait a second. When we were selling through retailers, we had a pretty good sense of who we were talking to. But what if we're going directly to consumers? Who are we actually talking to there? If we're going to marketing directly to our customers, who do we speak to? And so for the first time ever in its 116-year-old history, Case Knives launched a digital marketing campaign. First one ever. And part of that, of course, was just some data and research on who do we actually talk to. So they knew that they talked to knife collectors and to avid outdoorsmen. They knew that those are people who bought Case Knives because they knew that from the retailers, and they knew that just from being within that environment. But they went a little bit deeper to really look at who is it that purchases Case Knives. They found out that chefs and foodies are also big consumers of Case Knives, like this guy. Rondine lives in Canada. That's a Case knife right at the top there. He's cooking his breakfast outside. And I particularly like, you might have noticed this, the way that he used his bacon to make a smiley face on his breakfast plate. Do we love that? Yes, we love that. Artists and craftsmen are also buyers of case knives, but they also found this last category, what they call avid indoorsmen. So not outdoorsmen, not hunters and fishermen, fisher people, but also what they call avid indoorsmen. You know, people who carry a knife just because it's kind of part of their culture. They almost take a romantic approach to always having a pocket knife on them. So maybe because their dad always carried a pocket knife, or maybe because their favorite uncle gifted them a pocket knife when they were in high school. So avid indoorsmen and romantics are also part of the case knives buying community. That includes this guy. This is my cousin Jerry. Jerry carries a knife with him wherever he goes. Now, Jerry is a librarian. And so when I asked Jerry, you know, why do you carry a knife? Like, why do you need a knife? And he said, well, you know, I mean, I use it to open boxes. And I kind of scoffed at that a little bit. And I was like, oh, okay, Jerry. And he said, no, really? Well, also, like, you never know when you'll need to gut a moose. Jerry is not a hunter, friends. So I don't know how he's going to run into a moose in the stacks of the library. But, you know, he's a guy who carries a knife. So think about, just like case knives had to, this is a very diverse audience, right? Hunters and fishermen, as opposed to avid indoorsmen and romantics and chefs. Like, what is actually the thing that unites this audience? What is the thing? What's the thread that runs throughout the story that case knives could tell to unite that audience? They asked themselves, what truth actually would compel them emotionally? Like, what is the truth that they could, that would really touch them, that they would feel an affinity for trust knives, and that case knives, and case knives would be projecting, like, yes, we get you, like, we get you differently. How do they build that trust and affinity? So they produced, as part of this first ever digital marketing campaign, a kickoff video that I am crossing my fingers right now is going to play for you, because it's a beautiful piece of marketing. It's a beautiful video. So I'm going to play it for you now, and then I'm going to talk about why I love it. But while you're listening to it, and again, crossing my fingers that this is going to play, while you're listening to it, listen to the language that they're using in this. Okay? All right, here we go.
After thousands of years of usefulness, in the last decade or two, hands have fallen on hard times. Robots became co-workers. Shop class failed. And between swiping, texting, and double tapping, our hands have become all thumbs. But hands were made to make things. They're builders, helpers, artisans, designers, workers. They're hungry for crafts and challenges they can sink their fingers into. And when we don't give them those things, they become dull. Fidget spinners become a national pastime. Handymen and women become an endangered species. And the like button somehow becomes the most famous hand in the world. Call us callous, but we'd like the like button if it actually had some calluses. So let's do away with idle hands by idolizing what hands can do. Pull our hands out of our pockets and put them to work. Get them dirty. Shake off the rust. It's time we stop sitting on our hands and stand up for those who never stopped using them. Case knives. Keep your hands sharp.
Okay, so that played, right? Tom, can you confirm? I can't
Should
see
have
it
played,
from my
yeah.
end.
Should be fine.
Yeah, okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
It was great.
All right. So, yeah, it's so good, right? Two things that I love about this. I mentioned the language. I love the script of that video. There's a lot of really clever language in it. There's a lot of beautiful language in it. And almost the script of the video itself almost reads like poetry. You know, that line about let's idolize hands and stop hands from being idle, sort of some fun wordplay in there. So I love that about it, number one. The second thing I really love about it, though, is, and you probably picked up on this too, how they used actual people who are working in the Case Knives factory, as well as people who are in their community. Case is located in rural Pennsylvania, and they used people from their community, right? Artisans and woodworkers and chefs and people who actually live and work near the Case facility. So we talk in marketing a lot about making our stories feel authentic and marketing in ways that feels authentic. This is a really beautiful example of that. They didn't hire a bunch of actors. They looked within their own community and pulled the stories out of their community. So it's a beautiful example, I think, artistically, but also just the way that it resonates and did what it needed to do for Case. As part of this, they also realized they couldn't just wait for their community to come to them, right? They couldn't wait for prospects and customers to notice them, right? So rather than just putting all this content out there like I did when I spammed Bun, right? Instead of putting it all out there, they seeded their content throughout various platforms and places where they knew their customers are or their prospects are. So as part of this, they created a Case IQ quiz that they published on Alexa. You can go to Alexa now after my talk today and enable this Case hand quiz on there. And it asks you, once you do that, a series of questions, a series of 5 questions. And then at the end of it, you can text your phone number to you can speak your phone number, and Case will text you the knife that they recommend based on your IQ, based on your hand IQ and your skill set. So, for example, one of the things that they might recommend is this one here, the Pocket Worn Harvest Orange Bone Corn Cob Jig Medium Stockman. I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what those collection of nouns mean, right? That just feels like a bunch of words to me. So, but this is one of the knives that if you are a knife person, they might recommend to you. Now, I took the quiz, and Alexa knew that I was a poser right away. Case knew that I was a poser right away. I only got 2 out of the 5 of the questions correct, which is not very good. So this is the knife that Case recommended for me. Yeah, not optimal, right? Okay, so Condescending Cat is like, what are you even talking about? Like, we don't sell knives. We can't do that. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because of the bigger lesson in here, right? This is not a lesson about how to connect with an audience if you sell knives. The bigger lesson is that Case is communicating peer to peer, right? They're speaking directly to their audience as peers, as friends, as people who understand the mindset of the community that they sell to. They're not speaking to their target audience as a target audience, right? They're not brand to target. They're peer to peer. A subtle shift, but a really, really important one. This is what it means by one-to-one, right? Really think about who is it that we're speaking to, and how do we create that kind of affinity and trust with that one person, right? It's not brand to target, it's peer to peer. Case does this, as I said, by looking at their data, figuring out who is it that they're actually selling to, who are the people that are talking about them on social media, who is customer service interacting with, who are these people? They also have a very robust listening program, right? So they're listening constantly to their retailers, to their customers online. What are they saying about us? Who is actually speaking about knives? Who can we talk to? But they also rely on their instincts. And as much as I believe deeply in the role of data, I think it's most effective when you marry it with the art piece, right? When you think about your instincts as marketers, there's always going to be that element of instinct, that element of art in anything that you produce. And that's what takes that video, to me, and the whole campaign really, to the next level. Fundamentally, every story that you tell on behalf of your brand must be about your people, right? It has to be about your customers. Make your customers the hero of your story. And why do I believe that so deeply? It's because you've got to look for the people. No matter what you do or what you sell, find the humans at the heart of your story and find that universal truth that you can tease out of that inherently human story. Because remember, this is what your customers are thinking about. They're wondering, do I trust you? Do you actually know what you're talking about with me? Do I like you? Does it seem like you will be there for me long term, even when things fall apart or even when I have a customer service issue? Do I like you? Will you be there for me? And then they're looking for themselves reflected unconsciously in your marketing. Do I see me consistently? Do I feel like I belong here? Okay, my second point here is to slow down to build that momentum with the audience. This is a crucial mistake that I made with Bun. I was not building momentum with him, right? Instead, I was just trying to get him to come to me on my terms. I didn't slow down and build momentum with him. So everybody knows what February 14th, 2019 was. It was indeed Valentine's Day. Every year on Valentine's Day, the Bronx Zoo has this tremendous program in which they invite members of their community to name a cockroach after a loved one. Now, why does the Bronx Zoo do this, and why have they done it every year since 2011? It's because that everybody knows that after the apocalypse, or maybe after a pandemic, for example, what is the thing that will still be here? It's roaches, right? Cockroaches. So they invite their community to name a cockroach after their loved one as a symbol of their forever and undying love.
Fresh flowers were romantic. Week-old wilted flowers, not so much. This Valentine's Day, name a roach in honor of your special someone, because roaches are forever.
So that's the promotional video that they produced most recently. They put this video on several of their social networks. They ran it 3 times on Instagram, 2 times in January, once on Valentine's Day itself as a way to promote this program. They also put it on Facebook, right? 2 of the 9 videos that they posted during February were versions of this exact Name a Roach campaign. Now contrast that with the El Paso Zoo. The El Paso Zoo saw what the Bronx Zoo was doing, and they were like, that is genius. That is so great. Why don't we have our community name a Madagascar hissing cockroach after their loved one? Then they realized, wait a minute, we don't have any Madagascar hissing cockroaches. In fact, the El Paso Zoo has 0 cockroaches as part of its zoo exhibit. The El Paso Zoo is small compared to the Bronx Zoo when you measure it on actual acreage and when you measure it on actual endowment and operating funds, right? They're a fraction of the size and the sort of gravitas of the Bronx Zoo, which is almost an institution, right? El Paso Zoo, smaller, newer, not nearly as rich a facility. So they thought, well, we don't have any Madagascar cockroaches. We don't have any cockroaches at all, so I guess we can't do this. But then the marketing team said, actually, you know what we do have is meerkats. And do you know what meerkats eat? Meerkats eat cockroaches. And it's true. Once a week, a truck full of animal food and feed drives into the El Paso Zoo. Included in it are a bunch of freeze-dried cockroaches, which are fed to the meerkats. Marketing said, we can't have people name a dead cockroach after a loved one, so what are we going to do? They said, well, what about if we have people name a dead cockroach after an ex? Not a current, but an ex. So that's in fact what the El Paso Zoo did. Took a completely different approach. but similar. People loved this. They went nuts for it. El Paso Zoo launched it for the first time in 2019. I mean, look at the numbers on this thing. 7,000 shares, 6.5 thousand comments. People just swarmed, right? Chrissy Ann Barnes, the petty in me is living for this, like loved it. Michael Ramirez, like, how about my mother-in-law? Her name is Kimberly Miller Barrick, but we're all marketers here. Did he tag her? No, friends, he did not. So, not so brave, are you, Michael Ramirez? 6,000 people in 2019 opted to name a cockroach after an X, wildly succeeding the expectations of the El Paso Zoo, so much so that it actually overwhelmed the cockroach community. They had to involve these animals, cotton-top tamarins and golden tamarins and white-headed marmoset, like all these creatures that are suddenly part of this. No one knows what these things are, but somehow they are now being part. Now they're part of this effort. The El Paso Zoo also realized we've got to start talking about this. We should probably do this on Facebook Live, considering how successful a program it's been. So they thought, wait a second, we've never done a Facebook Live, so we better test this out. So Sarah Borrello, who leads up marketing at the El Paso Zoo, said, all right, well, let's just do this, people. Who wants a preview of what's to come Thursday? They thought they would maybe feed some cockroaches to some of those other creatures. So that's what she did. But you know what happens? Like, this is a pain that anybody in marketing could probably feel. If you've ever done a Facebook Live for the first time, you could feel this pain. It's really easy to just this is not my mistake, this is Sarah's mistake, right? It's so easy for this to happen, but painful. But Sarah is just like, I don't care. We're just going to keep going. We're going to figure this out eventually. She's awesome, by the way. Fun, can-do attitude. Okay, so they're feeding all these other creatures that the meerkats are like, guys, come on, what about me? Let's go, let's do this. So Valentine's Day rolls around, they figure out the Facebook Live, they have the camera turned the right way at this point, and Sarah starts it. Kim Fellows, like, people are looking in on this, they are logging in on this live from all over the US, watching from Chicago. Natasha is watching in Alabama. Shannon is like watching from Indiana and looking for Brian. Thank you, El Paso Zoo. Here's what happened that day. That's Sarah's voice in the background.
Munching on those cockroaches, guys. Look at them. They are loving it. There's all your ex-boyfriends, all your ex-girlfriends. Look at that one. Oh my gosh, she's so silly.
Yeah, so silly, so cute, right? I'm not going to play you the whole thing, but you get the vibe, right? You get the feel for what's going on here. It's not perfect. It's a little shaky, right? Sarah did figure out how to turn the camera right, but it's still a little shaky. There's no tripod situation, and she's just running some commentary in the background there. But you know what? Incredibly successful day. Alexandra was like, this is disgustingly satisfying. Jennifer Hardy, best Valentine's Day ever. Thanks. So why do I love this so much from a marketing standpoint? Because think about what the El Paso Zoo did here. Valentine's Day is awesome, right? It's lovely, and it's a beautiful holiday when you have love in your life, but sometimes it can be a very painful holiday for a lot of people. So what the El Paso Zoo did is they sort of tapped into that, right? Valentine's Day is not awesome for everybody. It can be sometimes a very difficult holiday. So you might be thinking, okay, like, what does this bug buffet have to do with my business? Why should I care about this? Let's talk about the bigger lesson here, is that the El Paso Zoo told the truth, right? Valentine's Day isn't always awesome. And they told that truth over time. They realized pretty quickly that it wasn't just going to be a one-time event. It wasn't just going to be a feeding frenzy on Valentine's Day. They actually embraced the opportunity to connect with their audience in smaller moments over time. And that's what built that connection with their audience and built the momentum for this entire program. throughout February, 10 of the 11 videos that the El Paso Zoo posted on Facebook were about this particular program or versions of this program. And again, not always with meerkats, but about this program. Momentum is better than moments, right? Don't think about how do we create these content moments or these marketing moments. Think about how do we build momentum. If you can think about your program over time, how do we build that momentum and adding layer upon layer, ultimately it's much more successful than just thinking about a moment or two. So fast forward to 2020, the campaign at the El Paso Zoo got tremendous coverage. BuzzFeed wrote it up. Jimmy Fallon covered the story. It got tons and tons of traction, right? Tons and tons of attention. And so for 2020, they updated this campaign to create a Quit Bugging Me sort of second edition, right? They said, get some closure. The notoriety of all of the attention and all of the media at that point, the earned media at that point, got them even more attention. 16,000 people opted in 2020. Remember, just 6,000 opted in 2019. They thought that was amazing. But 2020, 16,000 people from all over the world, not just the US, but from all over the world. My favorite moment, by the way, was how they had to expand the animals that they were feeding these cockroaches to. So here you see this giant lizard. They named him Fido, and he's eating Erica there. And there's a great moment where the zookeeper is holding a little platter of honey in her left hand. She had to roll Erica in honey just to get Fido to come anywhere near Erica. So apparently Erica was super bad news, just so you know. Okay, remember that this is the building momentum with your audience is important because this is what your customers are thinking. Do I trust you? Do I like you? And do I see you consistently? Are you turning that camera around and showing your audience who you are? Even if it's not always perfect, right? Even if imperfectly, it's much better to show up than to be perfect. All right, my third point here today is to slow down and to build that relationship with your customers. We talked about a few different ways to do that today. Certainly building momentum through a campaign like the meerkat campaign at the El Paso Zoo is a fantastic way to do that. But I think there is a lot of other untapped ways to slow down, to build the relationship with your customers over time. And one of those is the inherently old school email. I believe so strongly in email as a place to connect with your customers and to build that momentum and to build that relationship over time, because email is vastly undervalued by most of us in marketing. Now, if we were all together in a room, I would ask you to raise your hand and say, how many of you actually have an email program? And I bet 99% of you would raise your hand, right? And the 1%, I don't know what you're doing, but practically everybody has some sort of email program. I believe so strongly in email in 2020 because email is the only place where people and not algorithms are in control, right? On Facebook and on a social platform, algorithms are dictating whether or not your customers and your prospects are going to see your story, right? Going to see your marketing. And so think about email as an inherently special place. It's the only place where people and not algorithms are in control. And how do we actually treat that opportunity differently? Because it's so important in 2020 to really get this right. I think it's vastly undervalued by most of us, especially for the email newsletter. In an email newsletter, we tend to think about the first part of, I skipped that, didn't I? Sorry. 92% of marketers are using an email newsletter in their marketing programs, again, according to Marketing Promise research that we did with the Content Marketing Institute. But I think most of us are relying on the email newsletter as a way to distribute content. We think of our newsletter as a distribution strategy. We focus on the first part of that word. We focus on the news because we have things we want to share, because we have things we want to talk about, because we have things we want to inform our audience about. But I think it's much more important to think about the second part of that word. So it's not about the news, it's about the letter. It's about the opportunity to connect directly with that one person in their inbox, right? One person sitting at their desk or behind their phone or looking at their tablet and hearing from you. One person at one time. One of my favorite examples of a company who I think does this incredibly well and really understands the value and the opportunity with email is CB Insights. CB Insights covers the technology space for startups. And every day I get an email from Anand Sanwal, who's the CEO of CB Insights. And every day it starts with, "Hi there." He offers a bunch of interesting startup news and information. And at the end, he ends with, "I love you." Anand Sanwal says he loves me every single day. I think his conversational approach and that style that's reflected throughout the newsletter, not just at the start and at the end, is in part what is driving the growth of this newsletter. In 2010, it was 1,400 subs. This year, it just topped 600,000 subscribers, right? So I think this is why this has grown so much. It's because it's useful, it's inherently useful, but at the same time, it's also very approachable and human. The other thing that I really like about this that I want to point out because it is so unusual is that you'll notice that this email newsletter comes from this email address, anand.sanwal@CB Insights. Now, as I said, Anand is the CEO of CB Insights, and I don't think that this is his actual email address, but it's a proxy for his email address, and it's a monitored box. Your email newsletter in 2020 should not be coming from newsletter @ or data @ or the one I really hate, no reply @ right? You want to signal that we are people. If you want to build that trust and affinity, you want to build that relationship, it's got to come from a person. It's got to feel like it comes from a person. This is 2020. We should be able to do this. Warren Buffett is an icon of industry, right? Everybody looks forward to what Warren, this Oracle of Omaha, thinks about business opportunities, the business world. One of the ways that we access what he's thinking about is that every February, Warren publishes his letter to shareholders, right? His letter to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders. There are tens of thousands of people who read this, not only the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway, who he's really communicating with, but also the press looks at it. So many pundits and analysts and folks in the financial news read this, write it up, they dissect it for what is Warren thinking about? What does Warren think about business in 2019 or 2020? When Warren, part of the reason why I think that they access this so much and why it is so popular is because of the way that Warren writes it. If you go and you read Warren Buffett's letters to shareholders, it's a great read, right? It's very simple. He runs a complex conglomerate, right? But he approaches his news, his letter in very simple terms. He describes what's going on in his brain and in the business in very simple terms. It makes his letter very accessible, and he throws in some sort of playful language too, right? He thinks about how does he make this a fun read? Even though it's a letter to shareholders, it doesn't have to be fun, but he makes it fun. Now, when Warren sits down to write this letter to shareholders, he's not thinking about those tens of thousands of people who ultimately are going to read this newsletter. No, instead, he's thinking of this gal. This is Doris. This is Warren Buffett's sister, Doris. And when Warren sits down to write that letter, Doris is who he writes to. He said, she's smart and she reads a lot. She doesn't know all the financial jargon, but she doesn't want to be treated like a child, he says, right? This is the part I love. I try to say on paper what I'd tell her about the business if we sat down for an afternoon. It's such a beautiful way, I think, of framing all the writing that you're doing. And I actually think that writing to Doris is a storytelling, it's a content, it's a marketing superpower. If you can think about that one Doris who you are trying to affect, whose mind you are trying to change, don't think about your target market, don't think about your segment, don't think about your personas, think about your Doris. Who is your Doris? Every other Sunday, I publish my own email newsletter, not for Marketing Prof, but for my own site, but on my own site at annhamley.com. And every other Sunday, when I publish this newsletter, when I sit down to write it, I think about that one person that I am trying to help. I think about a question that I got from somebody, maybe one that Tom is going to ask me today, or maybe something that I saw on social media, or something that I got in my email inbox. I think about the one person who I am trying to help, one person I'm trying to affect. One subscriber, one Doris at all times. When you write to Doris, I think it changes the way you communicate. It's not, this is a thing we're blasting this segment about. Instead, it's a useful thing I want to tell you about. One person, not a room full of people, one person. And when you write to Doris, it's not a one-way communication. It's not a distribution strategy. Instead, it's a two-way communication strategy. So try to find ways to build in some sort of connection, some sort of back and forth with your audience. How can you invite them into the conversation in various ways? You also don't worry about not my Doris, the people who you don't sell to, like Neil, who signed up for my email newsletter, and look at the email address he used. Like, we're starting here, Neil? Okay. Or Anand Sanwal, who tweeted recently a subject line that CB Insights used in one of its email newsletters. It was 35 websites that are ugly AF, and that engendered a lot of, not a lot, but a few people complaining about it. He said, so some folks write in saying that they're offended by the language. Anand's like, come on, guys, it's a free newsletter. If you don't like it, unsubscribe and move on and don't write in, okay? Thanks, bye. He doesn't care because it's not his Doris, right? He's not going to worry about it. He's not going to fret about the people who don't connect with that sort of attitude that CB Insights has when they publish their newsletter. Because you can think about this more broadly. They're not going to be good customers long term. They're the ones that are going to be a terrible fit and kind of a pain in the neck to deal with. The more specific you can be in your writing, the more relatable your marketing will be, right? Think back to that case knives example that I showed. The specificity of that was so wonderful, and it made the whole video a whole lot more relatable and lively. I think of this all the time with everything that I write, with everything that I produce, from my own brand, from Marketing Profs. If the logo fell off, if you were to cover up the logo on my newsletter, for example, does it sound like me, or could it come from anyone else, right? Could it come from anyone else other than me? And if the answer is not a resounding heck no, it couldn't come from anybody other than you, then I'm good, right? Think about your marketing, though. If you cover up your logo, does it sound like you? Would you know it's yours? All right, so wrapping up here today, and hopefully we'll have time to get to some questions. Think about your marketing through this lens. This is what's going to build trust and affinity with your audience. You want to be customer obsessed. You want to tell that true story over time. And you want to communicate in a relatable voice. I talked about email here today, but there's a whole lot of places you can be more relatable in the content that you're producing, in the story that you're telling, be it on social media, be it through email, on your website, whatever the case may be. All of these things together is what builds trust and affinity. And by the way, that's a multiplication sign there, because I think you need elements of those three things to build the kind of long-term trust and affinity and loyalty. So thank you so much for your time today. Now, if we were together, I would expect one of you to raise your hand and say, wait a sec, hold up, Anne, what happened? What happened with BUN? Are you worried? Are you wondering what happened with BUN? So let me tell you, friends, what happened with BUN. I had to rethink how I was approaching BUN in my journey to convert him. And I thought to myself, am I actually building trust with him? Do I consistently show BUN that I understand him best? And am I building that affinity with him? Does Bun like me? Like, am I actually showing him that I understand his mindset? Well, friends, it starts with data, doesn't it? I realized I thought I knew rabbits. I didn't know squat about rabbits. I didn't know anything about them. I didn't know that Bun was an eastern cottontail. And did you know that Bun does not even like carrots very much? I mean, he likes them, but he much prefers greens. He much prefers tall grass. I was trying to feed him all the wrong things. I was using the wrong kind of content to try to connect with Bun. And once I went and did that research, you might say, by the way, that I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with my research. It's true, I did. So once I did that research, I realized that I needed to adjust my approach because now I had the data. Now I knew what Bun was all about. So here he is sitting inside that grass, that tall grass that's right off the patio. What you're looking at there is a bunch of arugula, and what he's munching on right there is some tall grass that I picked from a field not too far from my house and then squired it home by the armful. And yes, my neighbors think I am absolutely nuts. So we worked on our relationship all throughout July and August of last year, Bun and me, with me just being very patient on Bun's terms, building that relationship. Here I am holding out some romaine to him, and there he is completely ignoring me and just enjoying the grass. But here's what ended up happening. Bun was aware of me, I knew, but I also knew that he was deeply in the consideration phase because there were a few times that he actually came pretty close to me and he would sniff at that romaine that I was holding out to him. So I knew that he was thinking about converting. I knew it was going to happen. So here's what ended up happening. Are we ready? This is a big moment. And I wish we were all in the same room together physically so that you could just see how this is. Okay, here we go.
I'm ready, Ann.
It's beautiful, so beautiful. All right, so I hope that your heart is filled with as much joy as mine did at that moment. And honestly, every single time I watch that video, I just get overwhelmed. That was a 3-month process right there. So so thank you so much. Thank you, Tom, and thank you everybody for being here today. And I know I ran a little bit long because of tech problems and because of my general long-windedness, but I would love to get to some questions, as many as we can get to today. And I just want to mention that whatever we don't get to today, please reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Ann Hanley, or you have my email address there if you want to reach out to me directly, or you can sign up for my email newsletter if you don't want to talk to me directly, but you want to talk to my newsletter. So let's go, Tom.
Awesome. Thank you. So JC will be switching over to the Q&A slide. I'm not sure if you can see the questions yet, but I'll start asking you questions, Ann, that have come in from the audience. If you're in the audience and you would like to ask a question, feel free to put it in now. We'll go over a few minutes to take care of some questions. So let's start with the first one that came in. Sometimes people think more is better because social posts, it scrolled down, because social posts only last for such a limited time. How do you help educate those who think more is better?
So I think the key is a story, right? You've got to think about what is the story that you're telling, and then tease that out over time, to really build momentum with the audience. I don't think that more is better, and I also don't think that more is inherently bad, but I think the quality of what you're doing has to be high, right? So if you're posting more for more's sake and you're just throwing a bunch of stuff up there, that's not the right approach. Instead, it's really about how do you actually use that opportunity to build that relationship, and how do you actually use that opportunity to map back to the story that you're telling?
Great answer. And by the way, great workshop. I learned a lot from the trust and affinity and the stories. And Bun was super cute. I'm glad you were able to get to
Oh
him.
my God!
So great work.
Yeah.
Great workshop here. Sorry. Here's a question. Great workshop. Does this mean that marketing is always a slow game?
I think at key moments, yes, it is a slow game, but I don't think that means that we need to go slow all the time. I mean, I think the beauty of technology, the beauty of the access to the tech that we do as marketers can help us be more efficient and effective, and yes, can allow us to go faster. But I think, as I said, that there are key moments when I do think that we need to get things right, slow down, and really think about these things of like, who are we selling to? First of all, especially thinking about it from your customer standpoint. Secondly, think about how do we actually, the story that we're telling, how do we tease it out over time and build that momentum? And then thirdly, how do we actually communicate in a way that's going to build the relationship and build that trust and affinity? So I don't think that it's always a slow game, but I do think that you've got to approach it with maybe a slow mindset is a better way to put it, and think long term. Part of the reason why I think we get into trouble in marketing is because we optimize for short term. We optimize for, say, to clicks. And it causes us to do things, I think, that ultimately come around and bite us in the butt. And so I think to the degree to which you can think long term and more slowly about building that relationship, if you think first through that lens, I think you won't do things like optimize for clicks, which could potentially really annoy your audience. I mean, it's more of an approach than it is a speed, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and I think we're all kind of feeding the marketing beast, and I think what I take away is step back periodically and say, do we really need to do this? Should we be doing things differently, doing less in some cases? So great.
Right.
So one person asks, is the moral of the webinar to speak to one person?
I don't know about the moral. Am I moralistic? Wow, I got to change my approach if that's what people think. In a way, yes, or one rabbit maybe is a better way to put it. I mean, Bun is obviously a proxy for a whole group of people, but I don't think it's just about speaking to one person, although certainly in email, I think it's important to have that mindset of speaking to one person. I'll give you a very specific example of that. I get emails from brands all the time that start with, hi friends, for example, if they're a friendly brand, if that's their tone of voice, or they start with, dear customers, if they're a little bit more buttoned up, like in the B2B space, for example. And I always think that's curious because there's not a room full of people who are sitting and opening your email. You're speaking to that one person. So even to shift your mindset to there, like start with dear friend or hi you or hey chickadee or whatever the case may be. I think about that one person. And so again, I think it's more of a mindset than it is a directive, and I'm certainly not moralistic at all. Can I jump in here and just answer one question that I saw fly by that I feel like you won't ask me, Tom, so I'm going to ask myself, if that's okay. So it was the one about, actually it was more of a comment, and somebody commented in here that their dog would jump out the window if this happened. And if they tried to convert a rabbit in their backyard. And I just want to say that actually was a concern of mine because my sweet little dog, Abby, I had to put her in the house on several occasions, and I feel really terrible about it now. But, it was a short-term sacrifice, I thought, for long-term loyalty. So I was willing to make it. So that was it.
Great. And one related question then, did Bun ever get around to advocating and bringing other Buns around?
Yes, that's the next version of this talk, actually, because, so here's the amazing thing. If you go on my Instagram, you'll see that I built, or my son built Bun a house because, I live in Boston. where it gets very cold in the wintertime. And so we built BUN, this little insulated bunny hut, again, doing our necessary research, using the data that we had about BUN and his habits and lifestyle that we would need. So built him a hutch in the backyard. And this year, so now it's, summer of 2020, this happened last year, summer of 2019, summer of 2020, BUN is back, and he has his baby with him. He has BUN'S son, as I call him, with him. So some of you might be thinking, well, BUN is obviously a girl, but I still prefer to think of BUN as a single dad. So, this is my story, Tom, so I'm going with it.
It's your story. So I have a question on the kind of a dear to my heart on the data side. How can brands better use customer data to guide storytelling?
So that's a really good question. I think the key to that is being able to access it, number one, really having a place where you can aggregate all of that data in one place, and that allows you to sort of sift through and make some intelligent decisions about who is it that we're speaking to, for example, in what ways is the story that we're telling going to resonate with them. So that sounds kind of maybe basic and a little fundamental, but that's a massive challenge for a lot of organizations, right? A lot of, especially enterprise organizations. So how do we actually figure out who we're speaking to? Case Knives had that exact challenge. Yeah. And so it's thinking about how do we actually access that data in an actionable way and solve that first, and then look at trends. Number one, once you've solved that issue, certainly look at trends and just like Case Knives did, think about like who are you speaking to, number one is what I would do, and then look at trends over time and how that audience reacts and behaves is important. But the second piece too is just thinking about, marrying the data. Now you've got this rich repository of data that you can access in an accessible way, but then also think about, the individuals and the stories. And that's where I think the art and the creativity can, combined with the data can make for a really powerful story. So yeah, it's a bit of both, but I think it starts with finding a place to actually access it and just thinking more holistically across the organization.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially once you have the story to different segments like they did, you got to communicate to those different segments in some cases, so you want to have some segmentation available to be able to do that. Okay, and then related to the pandemic, I'm going to combine a couple questions. I'll try to weave this here. So do you think the pandemic has changed the approach to storytelling, and is there anything about email being better than social media for this current environment?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to say that email is better or worse. I mean, I think email in my case is vastly undervalued, and especially now when we can't physically be together with our customers. I mean, depending on where you live and sort of how loose the guidelines are around around your business, and depending on what business you're in, you may have more access or an increasing amount of access now. But I find that that email and social are actually more important now than ever in this pandemic, because those are our touch points with our customers and with our prospects. That's where we should be focusing on telling our story. So again, I don't think of it as email is inherently better or worse, but I do think that it's a vast opportunity or an untapped opportunity to really leverage that a whole lot better. And as for social too, I think social is, I mean, I love social. It's a great place to build those relationships, but I would use social more strategically to get people more involved with my email program. So use it as a way to really build that relationship and port as many of those people as you can into your database and into your email newsletter program.
Do you think the pandemic has changed the approach to storytelling?
I don't think it's changed the approach. No, I don't. But I do think that it's changed the way that we need to communicate with our customers. I mean, I don't think that there's any marketer out there who hasn't rethought every single touch point in their marketing program right now. I mean, it's not business as usual. And so I think it's there's much more of a need, I think, to look at all of our marketing through that lens and make sure that we're not coming across as tone deaf, making sure that we're not coming across as like just things are just weird, you know. So yeah, I don't think it's changed the story, but in terms of how we're telling the story, I do think that it's shifted that slightly. And I'll give you just a really quick example of that. So Rothy's shoe brand, one of my favorite shoe brands out there, for a couple of different reasons, but I really love the way that they've changed their approach during the pandemic. So they haven't changed their story, right? They're all about sustainable shoes. Their shoes are made from recycled plastics. So that's remained consistent. They haven't changed who they're talking to, but they have changed how they're telling that story. And they're highlighting their customers and the people who work at Rothy's to a much greater degree. And so they're putting those people front and center. They sort of turn the camera around, so to speak, and showing their humanity a little bit more. So, you know, the story doesn't change, but how you tell the story, I think, actually does change. That's just one example of it, but I think there's lots of examples of brands who have done that.
Yeah, great example. Do you have time for a couple more, and then we'll wrap up?
I do, yeah.
So one here is about the marketing funnel. Do you think the marketing funnel is still valid because purchasing decisions have become more complicated? I see more as a guide, but do you think the marketing funnel is still something we should consider as marketers?
I think that my friend Andrew Davis is going to be part of this series, and I think that he is going to be talking about what he calls the loyalty loop, right? Which is, I think, a much more relevant way of thinking about our marketing, because the problem with the marketing funnel is that it stops, right? I mean, even if it stops at loyalty, it still ultimately stops. And so the reason why I love Andrew's loyalty loop is that he weaves in, because it's a one continuous loop, right? So I do think that is, in terms of a visual, a better model for how we should be thinking about marketing. Now, I know that I shared a marketing funnel here, but, you know, it was for simplicity's sake, to tell you the truth, because, you know, BUN just didn't have patience for a loyalty loop. So we're going with funnel for BUN. But in the real world, I would say that, thinking of your marketing in a more continuous ecosystem 100% makes sense.
Well, BUN'S rabbit hutch is kind of the conversion, and then you obviously will be building loyalty over time with more food. So. Yeah,
exactly. And so it doesn't stop, right? Even though my funnel has stopped, it's like my relationship with him has not stopped. And, you know, if anything, it's become more long term. So yeah, we're in it. We're in it for the long term.
So rapid fire to finish these last two, any inexpensive data collection tools. So treasure data is obviously more enterprise focused. What about inexpensive data collection tools?
Oh my Lord, that's probably a better question for you, Tom. I mean, I look at Google Trends. I mean, just to sort of, for my own audience, for my own content needs. I also just do a lot of sort of just social listening on Twitter. Part of the reasons why I love Twitter so much and why I've been on it for over 10 years now is that it gives me a lot of social insights into my audience, the people I talk to, which are people like you, which are marketers. And so, you know, I think you can make this as complicated as you want, but I also think that, you know, it's much better just to get into social and start interacting in there. Honestly, I think just a full immersion program in social where your customers are. If you are a small company, there's really no better way to improve your storytelling and to improve your content and improve your marketing than just to get to know them in social media and be part of the conversation. I hate to say that in a way because we hear that all the time as marketers, like you need to be part of the conversation, but I don't think you can lead a conversation, which is what we want to do. And we can't really build that trust until we sort of know who we're talking to, right? Until we're thinking about it from a peer-to-peer approach. So just start by getting into social. I think it's a vast opportunity just to talk to people.
Or reach out to your customers, look at your existing customer data wherever it resides in your company, as well as surveys.
Yeah.
Like do a quick survey.
Yep.
And last one, let's just see if we can do it quickly, about events. How do you see storytelling changing for events in our current socially distant climate? How do you still connect and serve customers with events when they can't be in person?
Yeah, I mean, this is the challenge that all of us have right now. I mean, certainly, virtual events, there's a ton of new virtual platforms that have cropped up, and, that's kind of what we have right now in terms of events. So, I just didn't think in terms of connecting our events strategy with marketing, going virtual, but also finding ways to not just do the same old that everybody else is doing. There's a lot of innovation going on in the virtual event space right now. And so I encourage any marketer to really do their homework and look around and see the platforms and see the features and the functionality of them. Because I've sat in on a bunch of demos recently, and there's just so much interesting stuff that you can do with these platforms. The other thing that I would say, though, is that, I think we need to not just take your live events and port them into an online environment, an online container, and call it a day. I think you've got to completely reimagine how you're thinking about delivering your event in a virtual environment. So you might have, run an event that had, 2,000 people there or 1,000 people there, whatever the case may be. And there's a way that you had like a keynote, and then you had breakouts, and then, those breakouts went to, breakouts were all 15 minutes, and then you got together for breaks. So you've got to really rethink. If people are fatigued from being in Zoom all day, you've got to shorten them up, tighten them up, make different alternatives. I mean, there's a ton of ways I think that you can start to iterate on that, but it's not about just porting it over. Instead, I think it's completely reimagining it.
Totally agree, and test new approaches and learn from what others are doing well. So thank you so much, Ann. That was super compelling content, really thought-provoking. Any last words before we end the presentation?
No, it was just really nice to spend some time with you today. And Tom, as always, I'm your biggest fan. So I really appreciate you inviting me. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody in the audience as well for the great questions. Bye.
Bye-bye.